Boys and girls, we are back for another edition of the Truman Lake Fishing Intel Expert Roundtable Dinner. We're down here at Nini's Italian Steakhouse in Warsaw, Missouri, and I've got a great bunch of guys here sitting next to me. I want to introduce Darren Langford. He is a new addition to Truman Lake Fishing Intel. We're going to be talking to him as the year progresses about bass fishing reports. He's out basically every week, multiple times a week, getting back into it a lot. So he is a great addition. We're really fortunate to have him as part of the website. My good friend Jeff Falkenberry of Endless Season Guide Service. My other good friend Richard Bowling of Richard Bowling's Guide Service. Crappie fishing extraordinaires, both of them. And man, they've been hammering the crappie lately, and we got a lot of fun stuff to talk about and what they expect here through the coming month. And then my other buddy, Steve Blake, who has been around on the lake forever and has a ton of experience crappie fishing, bass fishing, white bass, hybrids, everything, you name it. He knows how to reel them in. So really, really excited to have them all here tonight. And then in the future, it's kind of a little bit of a different cast tonight. As we move forward throughout the year, we're going to try to work in some of our other guides that don't always get a chance to make it down to these dinners. So just be on the lookout for that. We're going to try to work in some of our hybrid guys, some of our other catfish guys, the tournament guys. It's going to be an awful lot of fun and very, very informative. So first and foremost, again, I want to thank Nini's. They help sponsor these videos. They have a great restaurant down here. And if you are a member, you can get a free appetizer if you come in and show them proof of membership when you come down here to Warsaw. So be sure to stop in and see them. I also want to thank Anglers Port Marine. They help to make these videos possible as well. You can go get a Phoenix boat, Camus, Lowe. They have them all. So be sure to stop in. They are located right between Warsaw and Clinton, Missouri on 7 Highway. And just a great little shop, super helpful. And we thank them for making these possible as well. With that, I don't really have any other announcements, so let's just get right into it. We're sitting here, it's basically a third of the way through April. Turkeys are gobbling. We're hearing speak of some morel mushrooms popping up. But
speak of, I ate some last night.
All right. I did some searching myself this weekend and blanked, so we'll give it another week on our place, and I think they'll be popping. But
don't forget my red one.
Oh yeah, I checked my spot, and there was only one little one growing, so I'm waiting for them to kind of come up a lot more. But lake-wise, we got a lot of exciting things going on. The crappie fishing has been outstanding. Bass fishing is starting to pick up. It's going to be a great April. I mean, boat traffic is already picking up. So before we get into the fishing, I do kind of want to touch on that. So boat traffic is increasing. The amount of traffic on the ramps is increasing. And we touch on this from time to time around the holidays, and you know, this is kind of a seasonal thing. Everyone's getting out and fishing. So there are certain things to be aware of when it comes to putting your boat in that I kind of wanted to open it up to these guys to kind of toss out a few pointers with ramp etiquette and how to make things a lot more efficient. I mean, we were just looking at the Deadwater on Sunday evening. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, right before we came here.
So Jeff, what's some of your thoughts on the ramp etiquette? What can folks keep in mind to have a more pleasant experience for all?
Sure. Well, as you all know, the whole world's in a hurry anymore, and so the guy behind you is just like, "Come on, what are you doing? What are you doing?" You know. But try to have your stuff ready. You know, the straps off the back, the engine toter off, the plug in before you back down the ramp. Don't wait to back down the ramp to handle all that stuff. Make sure the coolers and the life jackets and the dog and everything else is in the boat, ready to go before you back down the ramp. Don't get down there and then want to load the boat. And you know, we get there early. Us guides, we like to get together and maybe have a cup of coffee and get our bait. And before we shove off in the morning, we get there early in the morning. If you get to the ramp early in the morning, when you back down the ramp, kill your headlights. Just turn the parking lights on. You don't need to see in front of you anyway. But the guy backing down next to you can't see to back down beside you because your headlights are blinding him. So there's just a couple of quick things for me.
Always try to have somebody back in too.
Yeah, if you got somebody to
If
back
you're
in,
by yourself
absolutely.
and you put your boat in and you tie it up and you got to walk up, get your truck.
We do
have
have
a fishing buddy. Have one.
Yeah.
And even if you're by yourself sometimes, if you got a buddy, because we get funny looks a lot. Me and Richard will be at the same place at the same time. he'll either have just put in or I will, and we just let whoever's second, we just let our other boat float and then go park the truck and then jump in the boat and run each other out to their boat.
And if you see somebody that's by themselves, go ahead and pull away from the dock. There's only a couple docks, only a couple places to tie in.
Right.
Back out and let him get out of the way. 'Cause
so he can get his truck.
otherwise, it's just going to hold it up more.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure there's more good ideas.
Getting everything right down on top of the hill is the best idea. Before you back down, I watched many times they back down through the water and they get out, they're unstrapped, they're taking their motor towed off, and man, that's what lines them up and makes people mad. So get everything ready on top of the hill.
Check your rig before you go to the lake. Don't back down the ramp and then be like, oh man, boat motor won't start. Well, it started last summer. You know, I mean, check all that stuff before you go there. Don't go on a Saturday and try to, well, we're not going to put it in. We're just going to make sure the motor runs. It's not going to work on a busy Saturday at a boat ramp. You know, so make sure it works before you get there.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. Richard, you go out of Bucksaw a lot, and they got a new deal this year on the ramp.
Yep.
Do you have to have a pass?
You gotta have a pass through Bucksaw. They sell them there at the at the counter at the marina.
Okay.
It's $40 for this season. If you're a vet, I think it's $20. So it's not a core pass; it's a Bucksaw pass, and you do have to purchase one. Display it in your window, just like you did a core.
And can you get a daily pass or
The daily's $5.
Okay.
The yearly's $40. So it's
Stair
not a
Creek's
bad
the
deal.
same way.
Yeah. Stair Creek is the same way. Okay. Do we know is Osage?
I think those things it's
I
got
think
Same
it's
way?
the same way too.
I think the only one that don't charge you now is State Park. I
Okay.
believe they're the only ones that does not charge.
Well, I'm sure they
See,
won't.
Bucksaw and all these places, they maintain their own ramps.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Parking lots, everything.
in the wintertime,
Roads.
when you got that ramp that still has courtesy docks in, you know, that makes it real easy not to complain about that $40 annual pass. It's
Yeah.
not a season pass.
Yeah.
It's an annual pass. But those guys that take care of those ramps year round, take care of those ramps year round.
Yeah.
When you go to a core ramp when the lake's on a rise and the water's about 6 inches over the top of the courtesy docks, you don't have that at these ramps that are maintained every day.
Right. Well, and that's something to keep in mind, especially for the folks that are coming from way out of state or whatever for the Big Bass Bash this weekend, the two weigh-in spots. And we're going to talk about the Big Bass Bash a lot here coming up in the next 30 minutes. But the weigh-in spots for that are going to be Osage Bluff and Stair Creek.
Yes.
So I imagine a lot of folks will probably be putting in around those areas. So just something to keep in mind. But with that, we'll let's roll into some of the fishing. So, like I said, we're a third way through April. Richard, I just kind of wanted to have you recap the last several weeks on the water. What have you been seeing? How has it progressed the last several weeks? And then we'll kind of get in on expectations for the
spawn.
yeah.
Still do that. It's been the same way, you know, for the last 3 weeks. I've been basically starting at the mouth of a creek at daylight, you know, I do 2 trips a day, and you can catch them to about 2/3 of the way back. And then all the fish are going to be scattered. They're not really on timber. They're spider rigging fish or live scoping fish is what I'm doing. And go in for the midday and go get my second trip, and the fish will be from the halfway back to the back into about 10 foot of water. It's been like that for about 3 weeks. It's just it's a good aggressive bite if you can pitch to them. If you're rigging, the only problem with that is they're one at 2 foot, the next one's a 10 foot, you know, maybe 15 feet. So just a bunch of different depths. Live scopes help me a lot, covering a lot of water. Like I say, some of them fish are 2 foot on the surface, and they're that way every day for a long time.
Yeah. Well, and we're missing Hunter tonight, but he had a really good day on the water during the Crappie Masters tournament here a few weeks ago.
Yep. Well, he's with Darren.
Yeah. Freaking forgot who you were with Darren.
I just stand back there watching fish.
So,
Heck of a net man.
remind me, you guys had 1480 something?
85.
1485 on 7 fish, which that pretty much wins.
I've won a couple tournaments before, and I thought we had that one won. I would have bet you money we had that one won. And, well, we got in there and took third. I was like, wow.
Yeah. Now, winning, they had 16 something, didn't they?
1675.
Yeah.
Almost 17.
And
Yeah.
the thing that's really disheartening about that is when you take a look at their smallest fish and our largest fish, they wouldn't even have used our largest fish. They'd have thrown it back. So we'd have to throw all 7 of ours back and upgrade them all
Wow.
to have caught them. And I mean, that was just a heck of a stringer. They're funny to watch. You know, they weren't that far from us. There was a lot of 2-pound fish caught in that area where we was at, and they flat go to work. That dad just watches that boy. He gets up on top there, and he is something with that live scoop. He can flat catch him.
Who won it? The Gorhams?
Dalton, Larry
Dalton,
Gorham.
Larry.
Now, something kind of interesting for you guys that day, you noticed, and I think the Gorham saw the same thing.
Yeah.
You thought there was a bunch of trash fish up high. You put the live scope down and pitched to them, and turned out it was crappie.
Yeah, we usually drove past them fish, and we drove past some of them that morning, thinking they weren't the right thing, because you couldn't see the whole fish. You could just see part of it. They were so shallow in the water column. We were in 19 foot of water, and we were looking, and we just wasn't seeing many fish. A lot of small fish, you know, down there 10, 12 foot, 13 foot deep. We pulled up on one, and I don't know why, I just dropped on it, and I mean, it just wham! But just as soon as I dropped it in the water,
Yeah.
and I set the hook and it come off. It kind of freaked me out, and then it dropped down enough where we could see it, and we said, "Oh, that's the right one."
Right.
He swam over the other side of the boat, and Hunter just dropped down on him and caught him. And he was a 160 something, which was nothing that day. That's an eater fish that day. I mean, good grief, 160s. They were, you didn't even weigh them, measure, nothing.
Yeah.
Just pitched them back. And we started keying in on that, and that's every fish we caught was on 2 foot or less in 19 foot of water. And the funny thing was, you'd mess with them and mess with them, mess with them, try and get them bite. Some of them wouldn't. They just sit there and look at it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they dive to the bottom. They go all the way to the bottom, straight down. And then they just swim along the bottom about 5 or 6 feet and then turn and come straight back up to 2 foot and then just level out. And if you dropped on them that time, you just had to stay with them, watch them. So they come back up, you catch them.
That's weird.
I know there was something down low they didn't like. They'd go down there to hide, but they didn't like
Something
it.
about the pressure,
Something
maybe.
pressure, something was messing with them.
So let me ask you this: if you didn't have live scope, would you have a chance at even seeing those fish?
No, you would have never caught them fish.
And you never even see them on the graph because they're
No.
too high up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's too much noise.
Yeah.
Interesting.
They were right into interference. Even on the live scope, you have a little surface clutter, and I mean, you could just see it had a little half moon in that clutter. Be the bottom of them. I set the hook on a 191. I think I mentioned this before, but I could see. I run a sinker, egg sinker, about 4 inches up above my jig, and run a small jig. I could see my egg sinker. You could only see 1 inch to 2 inches deep. The water color was terrible, and I could see my egg sinker when that fish hit. I mean, he was or she was only, 6 inches deep.
So what do you think it was about that day that the fish? Because that was a fairly nice day. I mean, what have you?
I think the water had come up and the water temperature had dropped 5 degrees in the backs. I think some of them big females had moved up and were thinking about doing their thing. And they do early in the upper ends of the lake, the upper ends of the tributaries. When that dropped 5 degrees, I think it pushed them out because where we found all the fish was on secondary points where we got them. But where like Gorham's were at was where the creek channel met the main, it's a tributary creek, met the main creek. And that's where they come. So them fish, I think, had pushed back out. And why they were that shallow, I can't tell you. I don't know.
Warmer surface temperature
Yeah.
with the big drops.
Some oxygen, I don't know if the water's turning over. I don't know what it is. I mean, them guys down there probably know more about it. I've seen them.
I've caught black crappie on this end of the lake in January before in 43-degree water, and they were 2 to 4 foot deep. Good black crappie.
Yeah.
Now, Steve, on this end of the lake, because the Grand Arm, as everyone knows, is like the popular destination. You kind of stay down on this end of the lake. It's taken a little bit more time for it to turn on down
Right.
here. What's been your experience last
It's a
several weeks?
deeper, larger body of water. We don't get the water temperature as fast down here. The best I found to this point, there's 60 degrees up one of the major creeks, but for most part, everywhere you go, it's 57. Now by late this afternoon, I'm sure we hit 58 or 59. And I have seen them go up 58 and a half. Normally it's more like 62.
Mm-hmm.
We, on this end of the lake, are finding our fish. Before the water came up, we were having a ball.
Yeah.
I mean, hour and 15 minutes, they were fun. And once the water came up, these fish just, boom, into the spawning pockets.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm finding them in bare gravel pockets with no timber.
Mm-hmm.
And from 16 to 19 feet, it's like somebody just put up a wall, and all the fish are right there.
Mm-hmm.
But you can sit there and you'll see them. I mean, they're just everywhere. And 1 out of 10 is a keeper.
Right.
The keepers are there,
Mm-hmm.
but the little fish are just wearing it out.
Yeah.
I think when this happens, as many fish are it stays up in them spawning pockets, it's going to be like somebody put the switch.
Mm-hmm.
It'll just be all at once.
Yeah.
The males, usually when they first start down here, right at sunset, they'll come into the bank. And they'll do that for 2 or 3 days, and then it's on.
Mm-hmm. Now, it's a little deeper bite, you said, so
And they're whacking it, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
They're whacking it.
you are using what size jig? Because you talk about keeping that jig straight
Right.
up and down,
Right.
where it's not dropping back behind the boat.
Right.
So fill me in a little bit more about that for folks.
I'm fishing 8-pound test Berkeley big game,
Okay.
moss green, with a 1/4 ounce bob bait short shank jig
Mm-hmm.
and a swarm jig. And with the watercolor the way it is right now, black and chartreuse has just been awesome.
Mm-hmm.
We caught them on other colors, but black and chartreuse will outfish anything else.
Yeah. And Jack Vanderpool, I've actually talked to him a couple times the last couple weeks, and black and chartreuse.
Right.
He's tried other colors, but exactly like what you say, he's like, it's like, I don't know why I bother, because black and chartreuse is vastly out.
Our water is really, really bad stain down here. Now, you can go up the Osage, and there's pretty decent water up there.
Mhm.
That's probably the best water on the lake right now.
Yeah. How's the Grand looking?
It's all right.
Yeah.
It's good fishable water.
Yeah.
Tebow's mud.
Yeah.
Way up top. I mean, it's brown.
Yeah.
Like mahogany.
Now, I hadn't checked the lake level the last couple days. It got down to 714 something.
715, 57, it come up 5700s.
Okay.
Since that rain the other day.
Okay. All right. And
But it only came up 200s.
Yeah.
Last night and today at noon.
mm-hmm. Well, and they were still running pretty good water at the dam.
Yeah, we just made a lap before we came here to Nini's, and it was running pretty good. So hopefully they'll.
That's gonna be, the way it's gonna play out, just as soon as they get 14, 15, 16 foot on that weir wall and on some of these humps,
Mm-hmm.
with all the current that's gonna be going through here, you'll see them hydrogen lights jump up
Oh yeah.
and it'll get ugly.
Yeah.
And I've caught them in mid-April before with the current on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Usually it's around May 15th when they go strong, but when you've got all this current,
Yeah.
you get those humps in the right depth and
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah. Jeff, you've been kind of in the Long Shoal area and just all over the Grand, and what similar patterns to what Richard's talking about, or?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, pretty much any of the creeks, you know, pockets all the way from Long Shoal up the Grand has all been. They're all about the same, really. I mean, we've been in. I can't think of one that we haven't been in. You or I one in the last week, and they've all got fish in them. And you know, it's just sometimes they're like he said. Sometimes they'll start in the front, and then later in the day, if it's sunny and warm and everything, they get on towards the back, and those fish become active at different times. You know, and like Steve was saying with these little ones, I have zero live scope experience. I do have the new active target from Lawrence on my boat, but I've had it 2 weeks now, and I'm getting good with it, but I'm not like good with it.
Yeah.
And we had some trips. We got rained out, and we cleaned our clients' fish. Richard and I went goofing. I needed some fillets for some landowners, and we went out and we went in the same creek, and I just tied my boat off to a tree and jumped in his rig.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, that beat all I seen, the way he's got that live scope out in. But Steve talking about those little fish, getting it before the big ones. Richard would pick out a fish, he'd say, flip on that one right there, and flip on it. And then like 3 little ones would come running in and say, get it away, get it away, get it away, get it away. So So you get it away, then he's like, flip in there again, and you flip in there again, and then the big one would turn up, you know, and look at it, and you'd catch him or whatever. 2 more little ones would come running in there, he's like, get away, get away, get away, get away.
So you're seeing the one big one on the screen, and then out of nowhere, 3 or 4 little guys appear on the
Yeah,
screen.
you know, you're going back and forth, and the cone's not this wide. So you spot a big one, you want it right in the middle of that cone, you want it hot, just like your jig. But while you're doing this, you see this fish, you see 2 or 3 little ones sitting out there, just a little ways. But when that jig hits the water, they feel that vibration or whatever. I mean, this is the one you want. When you get him to do this, you're going to catch him. But you got to get him to do that first. And if that one don't do it before these 3 say it, game on. Sometimes you can't get it away quick enough.
I've been rigging, you know, pretty much most of our fish, and we have been doing some single poling and with the active target and catching some fish, but that was my first real experience with live scope, and of course to be with somebody that's got it dialed in so good. But it just amazed me how them little fish, you know, you flip out on one in wide open water, and then all of a sudden these little dudes come buzzing in there real quick, and so that made me think of it when Steve was saying you can see all them fish and you drop it down and every 1 out of 10 is a keeper. You can physically watch that, and why that's happening, I have no idea. But it also makes you learn a lot of stuff by this new live fishing of crappie habits.
Yeah.
Another thing I never realized till I got to playing with my active target is how far a fish can detect something that just hit the water.
Right.
You know, like he said, you got a narrow cone, but it might shoot out. Like I could set mine on 120 feet. You know, we were talking to Bradley Jelinek earlier, and you can see a bait at, 120. But I run mine on 30 or 40 feet, and there may be a fish out there at 35 feet. And you may flip it out at 15, and you can actually see that fish, whoa, just run. It's amazing how far that they will come when they see a bait hit the water.
Yeah.
Even in dirty water.
Yeah.
So you flip on the fish you want, and then you got these 3 little jokers, and you got to get away from them. It's pretty neat.
Has jig color made as much of a difference for you guys as it has down the lower end of black chartreuse?
I've been using David's blue and chartreuse. That's all I've used for 3 weeks. I'm on the same bag and the same bait. Well, Jeff got to see it in action the other day. You don't rip them, you don't lose them, you don't break them off, they don't tear in half. That blue and chartreuse, you get it close to them, they're really easy.
Yeah.
Quite the jig. It's one of the better jigs I've ever put on, because most time you fight them, pushing them up, you know, these are hard bodies, the top of them. And you shove it up, and even when you catch 8 or 10 fish in a row, it does not pull that bait down. So you're not, you pitch at a fish and you set the hook and you miss it, your bait don't come down, so you don't got to take time to fix it, you just pitch right back on it again. Well,
and the thing is, and Richard's talking about David Townsend's just another crappie bait company. They're super tough. He's got something special on those where they just do not fall apart. But you're using them on a regular old jig head. You're not using the twist locks, are you?
The 1/4 ounce head.
Yeah.
And a big shank on it. And it still don't rip them.
Yeah.
They stay together.
And that's impressive. And if you're using the twist locks, I use those jack baits, the Blankenship shooter heads, where it twists on there. It just adds another form of just keeping it protected and on there. But to Richard's point, he's not even doing that. And you said you've got like dozens and dozens on one bait.
Caught up to 100 fish on one bait. One bait. And you can look at it. Even the line coming up off the bait, I use braided line. I use braided 10-pound line when I'm pitching way out. And it's frayed. And I'm not going to retire. I'm going to keep fishing until it breaks off.
Yeah.
Same 1/4 ounce head. I can pitch to 20, 25 feet and hit them pretty close in the head.
Yeah.
If you get that far out at one, you're going to see them shake a little, cock up like that, and be ready.
Yeah.
Game on.
That's freaking awesome. Have you guys used minnows at all?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Lots.
Yeah.
Of course, I've been rigging a
Yeah.
lot, but even on the live fishing, we'll throw a sinker with a hook and a minnow on
Yeah.
it. Sometimes they just won't. It seems like they won't.
Yeah.
If you can't get them to eat a jig, you throw a minnow at them, and
Yeah.
they'll get right on it.
Yeah.
When Jeff and I was out, we was throwing a 1/2 ounce. Well, I was throwing a 1/2
I
ounce
was too.
sinker with a gold hook. That's falling fast. But you're trying to get their attention is what you're doing.
With a gold hook, that's it.
Gold and a minnow.
Minnow.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
I
I thought you were about to say you were catching them on a hook. I'm Richard Bowling. Here's my hook. Bite.
Yeah. When you're spider rigging, sometimes I have people, they'd set the hook and miss a fish or whatever, and be like, hey, you lost your minnow. We run double minnow rigs. They're like, you don't have any minnows on that pole. Then they catch a fish on another pole. Well, you're goofing. I say, just set it back in there, and we're going to get this, and then we'll put minnows on it. And then they catch a fish on that pole with no minnows on it. Not uncommon.
That's wild.
And they'll eat your sinker too, that half-ounce sinker. If you pitch it or make a drop under them, they'll go, without a minnow, you don't have to have a minnow, it'll go down and grab that sinker,
Mhm.
half-ounce sinker, and carry it here to that door. And then just something's up, turn it loose.
Mm-hmm.
That's why
Lot.
I think the watercolor, obviously for visibility on color of a jig,
Mm-hmm.
makes a difference. But for the most part, what I'm learning about this stuff is I'm pretty sure you could hit them with a jelly bean and they'd eat it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a reaction strike.
Yeah.
So as long as they see it, they can eat it.
Yeah.
And so color, I don't think is a huge factor. Now we don't play with color a whole lot, but I know you guys tournament fishing. You ever see that it's like, oh my gosh, it's not. They're just not eating that color.
Well, tournament fishing, you're just looking for them old big ones, and you're not even. And they get a little contrary sometimes. Like last year, we were strictly black and chartreuse, which is a
Meat and
number
potatoes.
one Truman
Mhm.
color going. And then as we got out of the spawn and into the summer, started getting into the summer pattern, we noticed we were losing a lot of fish on it. They weren't getting it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just swapped up to a June bug chartreuse, and I mean, that was it. They just needed just a little twist. I mean,
Yeah.
Hunter'd still be dropping that black chartreuse, and he'd
Yeah.
miss them or get them up to the top of the water and they'd come off. And back in the day before live scope, they'd come off and it'd be this long, and you're like, wow. And you'd throw your rod down and you cuss and kick.
Yeah.
Now you just keep that live scope and you find him,
Mhm.
because he just swam down, or she just swam down there and stopped.
And she's an active fish.
You're
but
going to
she's already
catch
bit
it
once.
again. I mean, I've seen us lose 2 or 3 times. The same fish get on top of the water, swim back down, just stay right after him. You catch him again.
Wow.
But summertime in the upper end and stuff around Bucksall areas, when I see where color can matter a little bit,
Okay.
and we see where live bait matters. You see a lot of tournaments now that they don't allow live bait.
Right.
We use just jigs.
Mhm.
That's it. These
Rich-
big stringers.
What's your prediction on when we'll hit the spawn?
My prediction of there'll be a few males on the bank this week, probably guessing Thursday, Friday evening, but they're gonna move back out. I'm gonna say a week and a half they'll be on the bank. Pretty heavy on our end, is my guess, because we're gonna hit 38 degrees for about 5 nights in a row.
Yeah, that's gonna hurt.
That's the only thing that's gonna keep them off the bank this week, I think.
Is that starting when? Tonight, or I haven't looked at the
Tomorrow
forecast?
night.
Well, it was 38 last
Last
night.
night, yeah.
So let's recap lake conditions to go along with this. So right now, lake's still high, around 7:15 mark, give or take. Water temperature, we're seeing it getting close to 60 or maybe even a little above in the upper.
Yeah, he said he found some 57, some 60 way up some creeks. Everything I'm finding is 58, 59 in that area.
Yeah. So I know we talk about it's not necessarily water temperature, it's time of day.
Well, you got to have the water temperature,
Yeah.
but that length of day's got to be pretty close to 14 hours.
Yeah. And so water temperature that we're looking for is mid 60s essentially.
Right around
61,
61, 62.
Okay. So how does it work on Truman with the spawn? Starts where and does what?
Starts on the upper end and works
Works
its
its
way
way
down
down.
here.
Warmer water starts first.
Yep.
Dirtier, closer to the creeks, closer to the river, warmer water starts first.
And it does work its way down, but on this end of the lake, we've got some major creeks that go back quite a ways.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where you want to look for them,
Mhm.
all the way back.
Yep, back in the creeks,
Like-
like rivers.
19, when the lake was flooded, real bad.
Mm-hmm.
I was up Little Tebow, past the power line,
Mm-hmm.
and found spawning fish a week and a half before anybody down here even thought about catching.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And everybody called me 9 kinds of liar. Oh, you're not catching no bank fish right now.
Mhm.
Well, you got to understand, I'm fishing 63-degree water.
Yep.
Right.
You guys are fishing 54-degree water.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. What'll happen is those bucks will go in 1st
Mm-hmm.
and they'll start to build. And then you'll get your females that move in. And they don't hang out up there real long.
Mm-mm.
Once that female comes in, she goes in, she does her thing, she comes right back out.
Yep.
And, within, and don't quote me on it, but with some biologists I was meeting with, doing some studies in Oklahoma, usually it was within like 33 to 38 hours, those eggs were fried.
Wow.
That's how long it took. And that's why I tell people, they say, well, man, with all these fishermen, you think it's going to hurt the crappie population? I don't think so. The crappie's worst enemy is another crappie.
Yeah.
Because, that buck goes in, builds, that female goes in, she does her thing, whatever it is, 33, 38 hours, whatever it is. Those eggs are fried and they come out. Well, guess who's sitting out there? The one that just went and dumped them. The guy sitting there guarding them. And so they're the hardest on their cells. You know, that's a crappie's worst predator is himself.
Yeah.
And we've seen, I mean, look at the pressure we've seen the last week. Below the dam.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
There's 100, 150
Unreal.
boats fishing within inside each other.
Yes, sir.
And they're hammer fish.
Yep.
And it happens every year.
Yes, sir. Yep. And good fish.
Yeah.
Good fish.
Yeah.
And I think we're in a year class from that 2019 flood where we have those
Saved a lot of
3-year-old, 12-inch, 13-inch fish, and good fish.
Yeah.
And it's good. It's good to see, you know. But a lot of lemons coming out
Yeah.
of the lake right now. A lot of lemons.
So these fish are going to get up on the banks. What's the best way to? Is it a cork and jig underneath?
You
Just
bet.
pitching to them. What's the best way to get at them?
That's the most fun way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that'd make a kid out of you.
I
You
just,
know, cork
I just
it
take
in
a 12-foot rod and put a jig on about 18 inches and get on the bank and just, that way you're covering
Yep.
every bit of prime water. And a lot of guys like to throw road runners.
Yep.
Well, they're hitting every 6, 7, 8 feet.
Yep.
And they're catching the fish once in a while. I'll go right behind them and hammer and they get damn mad.
Yeah.
You know, if you're just dipping and keeping that jig in the strike zone, I mean, it don't take long.
Yeah.
We've done that for years with like curly tails or even beavers. I fish a lot of redneck rubber jigs, but we just long rod and no cork, no nothing. And I'll tell my people, like, if you feel the bottom, you're too deep. You know, right down at the bottom. And I mean, you're right against the shore. And just stay there, just hold it, and then let me drive. You know, and I'm on the trolling motor like, thump, and they're just ripping them out. But the funnest way, like Richard says, is a cork and
We all grew up as
Yeah.
kids watching a cork.
you got a little 6-foot ultralight and a slip cork, you know, set at 18 inches with a jig, and you throw it up there and bounce, bounce, reel, bounce, bounce, reel, bounce,
Yeah.
you know, and set the hook.
And if you catch one male, there'll be 3, 4, 5, and you can turn around and leave that nest and come back later, there'll be 5 more of them.
Yeah.
They just
Wherever
come
you
right
find 2 or 3 in an area early in the spawn, a few days later you can go back there and probably whack them.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They tell me that when the different cycles come in, they leave a scent in that nesting area. And when another cycle comes in, they'll go to that same area.
Makes sense.
That's what Chris Brook.
So Richard, a week and a half out, so that puts us basically first week of turkey season.
That's usually the week it happens.
Yep. So go whack yourself a gobbler and then get out on the lake in the afternoon.
You know, you get your Truman Lake McNabb. You kill a gobbler, you catch a limited crappie, and you find a dozen rows.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. The Truman Grand Slam. You got to make that happen. Well, that's awesome. So, did anyone else? I mean, we covered crappie pretty good. Did anyone else want to add anything to what we just discussed? I
I
think
caught some pretty good bass last week on spinner.
Yeah,
well, see.
The only time I've been,
Yeah.
you know, and I spent hour and a half and caught 6, and 4 of them were pretty nice people.
Mm-hmm. And were you throwing up in flooded bushes or?
Basically right in the very back anything.
Mm-hmm.
I went to 2 spots and they were right in the back in 3-4 feet of water.
Yeah.
Just slow rolling a big single span.
Yeah.
They
So
weren't bashful.
yeah. So they were hitting it hard. Now, do you throw a trailer hook?
No.
Okay. I know it's a kind of personal preference on everybody, and talking
Well,
to David Ryan. and
I won't
he's
say I
always-
never throw a trailer.
Yeah.
But not when we're flooded like this.
Yeah,
Right.
it's a little,
That's
you'll,
just
you'll
suicide.
struggle throwing
Yeah.
a trailer hook through the flooded stuff.
Yeah.
So hang on everything.
So, we've got the Big Bass Bash coming up, and typically this tournament brings 3,000 plus boats to Lake of the Ozarks. They're opening it up to Truman this year. I think a lot of part of it is keeping pressure off of Lake of the Ozarks as the big boat season starts getting underway on Big Lake O.
Big boat season's getting earlier and earlier all the time.
And so this is a really cool opportunity for Truman Lake. Now, before we hop into this, again, going back to the safety thing, I mean, we had a boat crash, what was it,
Yesterday.
2 days ago?
2 days ago.
2 days ago.
If it hadn't been for Dylan, they probably wouldn't have made it.
Yeah, so Dylan, one of our guys, was there at the scene when it happened, was able to pull some of the guys out of the water. But Richard, so they were kind of, from what you understand, they were kind of maybe going the wrong side of the lake and couldn't figure out which way they wanted to go.
I think, I wasn't there, so I can't tell you for
Right.
sure. But what I heard, talked to one of the guys that's both on the wrong side. You know, when you're going down the lake, you treat it like a road.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so they was on the wrong side. They tried to correct, and they just back and forth. And finally, one went right, and the other one went left, and he T-boned him. So the two guys in the little boat got threw out of their boat, and they had their life jackets on, and totaled both boats. And they got hurt a little bit, but not bad.
Yeah.
Could have been a lot worse.
Yeah.
But Dylan hadn't come along, it could have been really.
Yeah.
The boat, they didn't have the kill switch on. The guys in the water,
Mm-hmm.
so the boat will just, the torque of the motor will go in circles. So
Mm-hmm.
if the boat had kept doing that, Dylan hadn't got him, they could have been run over.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a law now. You got to work a kill switch.
Yeah.
So they didn't have it.
They
One
just-
boat, the guy had 9 dogs in there with him.
Oh, jeez. Well, yeah, and they just passed that law. 24 feet and under,
Yeah.
you have to have the kill switch
attached.
attached to you as you're moving down the lake. I just bring that up as a quick little deal because, back to our point, there's going to be not only a buttload of boats out for Big Bass Bash, but you're going to have all the other weekend traffic as well out on the lake. So it's going to be a busy one, and you just want to exercise caution.
Just like Richard said, though, in maritime rules, and when you go to captain school, it's called rules of the road. It's what you learn, and when you meet another vessel, you always pass port to port. That's passenger side. If you remember, if you ever wonder what port and starboard means, you can remember it by port is the passenger side, PP, port starboard. You always pass port to port, just like on a road. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The other is oncoming is going to be on your left.
But as far as your kill switch being a law now, but in tournament fishing, it's always been a rule. You have to wear your life jacket and kill switch when your
Anytime
big
big
motor's
motor's
running.
Yep.
They used to have some let you slide as long as
we're
you're
not
idling. You can do it, but not no more. You wear your life jacket and kill switch, and they will polygraph in this tournament coming up. And that's something that you can end
And
up
these-
losing a lot of money over not
These
2
boats
seconds.
now are so fast
Yeah, you don't have time.
and such high performance. Sometimes you don't have a reaction time. You better be one of the life jackets.
Yeah.
Well, and folks they get overconfident. If you remember that morning 2 days ago, it was really foggy, and I know it didn't happen during the morning. It was a little bit later in the morning, but it was foggy, like you
Yeah.
cannot see foggy.
Right.
And people think, well, I've got GPS and I'll just run my trail. Well, your trail don't show you if somebody else out there is idling along because
Right,
they can't
right.
see.
Right.
And that's the thing, you got to keep that in mind. Everybody's in a hurry,
Right.
you know.
Well, so Big Bass Bash, be on the lookout for other boats. That's just the way it is. But the thing about Truman and why I think this is such a cool opportunity, Lake of the Ozarks, the big boats kind of protect the fish in a way from getting too pressured. But at the same time, Truman's been high. And so a lot of folks hadn't started bass fishing here on Truman until the last week. So you're going to have a lot of unpressured fish on Truman as well. Darren, you've been out fishing a little bit. I mean, what's your experience in the springtime for those that might be coming down for this event? What kind of advice do you have for them on where they should be looking, what should they be doing, that type of thing?
Well, these fish are a lot like the crappie right now. There's one to stage. That's all they got on their mind is spawning.
Mm-hmm.
But bass, are like crappie. They want to eat. They're always thinking about eating. Well, the fish I've been catching and finding are all on secondary points. I mean, you can run down a bank 10 miles if you want. But the better fish are on the secondary points. They'll really stage. That's where they're a little different than crappie. Sometimes crappie kind of scatter out there. Bass, they'll stage around them points because they're a lot like me. Lazy. They get on a point and they'll bait the current and wind current and regular current in the lake will push that bait by them and they can eat without moving much. I think with the water up, as high as it is now, I don't know, do you think it's going to drop much before next weekend? I don't think it will.
I can't see it the way the rivers are running. I
We're
can't
supposed
see
to
it.
have rain 2 more days.
Yeah, I think it's going to be at this level. So if you're going to fish Truman, I wouldn't fish the upper ends. A lot of times everybody says, "Oh, that's where your big ones come from." Well,
Certain times
it
of
is,
year.
except when the water's high. That's flat up there, and it really spreads out big, and it's really hard to zero in on them. It gets too big. So I would focus more on the lower end of the lake, which is there's a lot of lower end of the lake. Tebow, Tebow's known for big fish. I mean, they've always had big fish. Palmy's known for big fish. You know, there's big fish everywhere.
Yep.
But they're not always easy to catch. But where I've been concentrating here lately is in the lower Tebow, and I've made it up almost to. I've went all the way to Windsor Crossing boat ramp, and you get up in there, it starts spreading out a little
It's
bit.
pretty muddy now, too.
It's pretty muddy, but the fish. I still caught a lot of fish there, but my better fish have been coming in this lower end.
How deep?
They're in the bushes. Now you've got a lot of grass, a lot of that coontail grass and stuff. That stuff you can't hardly cast anything through. It gets on everything. It gets on spinner baits. It gets on everything. So look for the bushes, the actual wood. There's no green. I mean, that's all dead. It's all been underwater forever. But look for any kind of wood you can find, and it could be just a bush. I mean, but the grass. No, you get in the backs. You can fan cast in the backs and catch fish. But if you'll look halfway back at them secondary points on the steeper banks where you can actually noticeably see a bank line, and then bushes are in anywhere from on the bank out to 3 or 4 foot sticking out of the water. There's a bunch still under the water, but that's like, I mean, looking for a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
Flip them bushes. And one of the keys to doing that, and I know some guys won't want me to say this, I'm going to tell you anyhow. Get a big sinker. These fish are reaction. I mean, when you drop that thing in there, they eat it. And I'm not talking about a half-ounce sinker. I'm talking about a 1 ounce.
Wow.
Get a 1 ounce tungsten sinker. Put you some kind of beaver or crawl or something on it. You can throw a jig too, but a jig sometimes it's a little harder to get worked out of that bush. Where this is, I throw trocar hooks, and I'll throw like a missile bait or a sweet beaver or something with a 1 ounce sinker, and you think, man, that thing falls so quick. It's amazing. I mean, that thing falls when you drop it in there, it just goes zoom to the bottom, and half the time it goes zoom and don't stop. That old big sucker's already got it and gone. I mean, they don't just kind of yo-yo it about 2 or 3 times, pick it up and flip it to the next one. Just don't waste any time and just cover as much water as you can. You find areas you can throw a spinner bait. Spinner baits are big fish baits. I mean, they always are.
My favorite's a chartreuse and white half ounce with a number 6 or 7
Colorado blade. And the reason you throw Colorado, it'll help hold that bait up. It don't let it get down so deep. You throw a single spin with a big willow, it wants to go down. Where that Colorado will allow you to reel slower, it puts off more vibration. So it's so you can work the back
fish on it.
now. It's a big fish bait.
Yep.
But there's going to be some good ones caught on Truman, guarantee it. I caught a 5-pounder Saturday, and a 5-pounder is going to do some good.
It's gonna make some
And
money.
it'll make some money. Yeah.
So, have you fished the Big Bass Bash before? So, will you fill everyone in on how it works so that they have like flights, 2-hour flights where you can weigh in, and what's the strategy behind it?
Well, the strategy will cost you money. I found that out the hard way. I went out right off the bat one day in the first 2 hours, and I caught a 528. Which a 528 is going to get you some money. There's no doubt about it. It's going to get you money every hour or every 2 hours. It's going to win you some money. You're not going to win with a 528. So I run in, was going to weigh it. I done decided I'm going to weigh this fish because you can only have 2 in your live well at a time. Can't have any more than 2. So you go to the end of the day and think, well, I'm going to weigh in the last hour, and you keep a 5-pounder in your live well, you're done. You know, you go out and bust an 8-pounder, you can't weigh him. If you can weigh him, but then you just burn a 5-pounder, it's going to make you some money. So I've tried to think about this and put way too much in it. You catch one that you think's going to win, take it to the ramp. Don't even mess around, because I run into the ramp, put it in the bag, was getting ready to walk up. I only needed 2 more steps, and I couldn't have went backwards. And a guy come up beside me and had one a little bigger. I mean, I could physically see he was a little bit bigger. I thought, I'm going to wait. So I just waited till after the 9 o'clock, and I weighed in my fish like at 9:02. So it would have been the 9 to 11. I took 8th place that hour. I'd have took 3rd if I'd have waited at their time. It cost me $800.
Big fish turn on when the sun came up.
So I wouldn't mess around with it. Now, They do have 3 pound and 4 pound. If you 3.00 or 4.00, it's an extra $500, which is hard to hit. You'll be a lot of 3.01s and a lot of 2.99s, and you can hang on to them if you want. But I would recommend, if you got one that's close, you don't know what their scale's going to be. It might
Right.
weigh 305 on yours. You better take it. You know, it's $500. I mean, you better take it. It's a lot of fun, but there's not a lot of strategy to it.
Don't overthink it.
If you overthink it, it's going to cost you.
So once you weigh in a fish, they release it and you're just back out to fish.
It takes, I mean, no time at all. As many boats, you think you'd be in line for 2 hours. It takes you longer to get a bag and dig the fish out of your live well than it does to get it weighed. I mean, they're quick. They got people there handing you bags and signing tickets. You got your little ticket with you. It's a lot of fun to fish. It's really relaxing.
Yeah.
It's just fun and relaxing. You can load your boat up. You can have up to 3 people in your boat. Each person is a separate entry. It's not per boat. It's each person. And you can fish 1 day or 2 days. It's a lot of fun to fish.
Yeah.
I mean,
So sounds like on Truman, you're probably of the belief that a flipping bait is probably going to catch.
if you get wind, you better have a spinnerbait on.
Yeah.
Or a spinnerbait or a vibrating jig or something. I caught a lot of fish that are down a vibrating jig.
You have a lot of trouble with them hanging up in the bushes.
I do in the wood, but it comes through grass really well. It comes through better than spinnerbait. Spinnerbait, that grass will tangle up some around that swivel, especially in that coontail is really slimy, and it's been underwater so long it just breaks real quick. But I did catch them on a vibrating jig. It's a little tough to fish sometimes. It's like a jig or a spinnerbait, and then they'll just bang, they'll hit it. A vibrating jig, a lot of times they'll hit it a couple times before they load. So just keep cranking.
Yeah.
Just keep on reeling, and once you feel it, you know.
Yeah.
And but I would, if you get some wind in a pocket, throw a spinnerbait, but for the most part, you better be flipping.
Yeah.
On Truman.
Right. So Steve, if you were fishing it, unfortunately they don't let guides fish it. If you were fishing it, what baits would you have on? I assume you probably have spinnerbait too, but I know.
Just like he said, I'd have on some kind of a flipping bait, a black and blue jig, and then chartreuse and white hand on spinnerbait.
Yeah. Now, if you're on the lower end, I know you've talked about the T-bow being a pretty good spot. Is that like the go-to area for you on the lower end, or do you spend some time on the Grand or the Pommy or the Osage?
I mean, in 38 years, I fished everywhere.
Yeah.
Basically, you know.
Yeah.
But as you get older, you tend to not want to make those long runs on a cold morning.
Yeah.
So I've learned to learn my water within 10 miles of here and know it. I have some 1,850 waypoints on my graph.
Yeah.
And they're anywhere from humps to brush piles to roadbeds to ledges. And for my money, the biggest fish on this end of the lake, like you said, is a T-bow.
Yeah.
Now, up the Pommy, there's a lot of big fish caught every year, but it's usually before this on a jerkbait. When the water temp hits 44 to 48.
Okay.
No one throws an A-rig anymore?
Don't throw it too much on Truman because the water's a little stained. They like a little bit clear water for that. It works really well on clear water. And it's starting to get a little bit late for the A-rig. They're still biting it, but you can start catching them.
A lot of guys will throw them up around the KK Island area for hybrids and whites.
Yeah. I don't bass fish hardly at all. Used to a lot, but that was pre-A-rig.
Yeah, Richard's over there being quiet. He's probably won more bass tournaments than anybody said.
I haven't bass fished in a long time.
Yeah.
I haven't.
I enjoy it. I just don't get much call for it. Everybody wants to take home a bag of fish to eat.
Right.
Yeah.
It's usually crappie, white bass, and hybrids.
Well, I can promise you
I
one
don't
thing.
kill bass.
When you catch a bass right now and he's a decent one, you better have everything right. You better have it tied on right. That's another thing with line, flipping bushes, and Truman Lake's so dirty most of the time. You fish 25-pound test and don't look back. I mean, that's just what you fish. Because they are mean. I mean, mean right now. When you lay into them, you know.
That's when I like to catch them.
Yeah.
When you're catching them fish on a jerkbait in December and January and early February, A 15-inch fish can weigh 3 pounds, and they're that big around.
Yeah.
They're just healthy, especially after the shad kill. They're just loaded.
Yeah, these are juiced up. They're really pulling.
So in the history of the Big Bass Bash, if I understand correctly, I was talking to Charlie Terrell, I don't think they've ever broken the 8-pound mark.
They're going to this year.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing a lot of
They're going
folks
to
that
this
think
year.
this is going to be the year. Lake of the Ozarks, their big tournament here a week or two ago, they had a 9 and 2 7s weighed in. So yeah, I was just kind of curious. You kind of made your prediction. I was going to ask you what the prediction on the weight was that was going to win it.
I mean, I love fishing Truman, love it to death, and love flipping bushes and stuff. And I think you can cash a lot of checks here. And you might. We've caught 8-pounders on Truman. They're there. You can catch them. But the lake is, it's big right now. I really think it's going to happen at Lake of the Ozarks. The fish at Lake of the Ozarks are just a little ahead of the Truman fish as far as ready to move up. And like Richard said with the crappie, it's only 38 degrees. And I don't think they're going to move on. They're going to hold right there. And it's going to be on down there for big ones. Now, it's busy, it's rough, and we're talking about boat etiquette, or ramp and stuff. One thing I can promise you in the Big Bass Bash, there's no doubt about it, I can guarantee it. You will be fishing around other fishermen. They will be fishing in front of you. They'll be fishing behind you. They'll be fishing everywhere. Just go fishing. I mean, the thing's been won lots of times by people just casting out in the middle of the cove.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of luck involved in this. I mean, it is. Not every day do you go out. People have been fishing for years. Don't know if they've ever caught an 8-pounder. That's a big fish. You don't go out and think you're going to catch an 8-pounder every day. You might think it, but you're not going to.
Yeah.
I would say it's going to get one on Lake of the Ozarks. Now, this lake is turning on quick. It's been kind of idled out. There's going to be a lot of checks cashed out of Truman.
Yeah. There was a couple tournaments that went out today, smaller club tournaments, really the first bass tournaments of the year. One was Men of Honor. I don't know a lot about them. I think they had 15 boats, and it was like 1540 something that won it. But then there was another one. I don't know which one was it.
Average Joe's.
Average Joe's.
17 to win it.
It took 17 some odd pounds to win that. So summertime here on Truman, you start seeing those 20-pound bags.
Oh yeah.
So it.
Tell me why this isn't like I said, I'm not a bass fisherman anymore, but I never remember this being a winter bass lake.
It's not, because
But the Ozarks is.
a lot of times the water's high like it is now.
Yeah.
And it just,
But at normal,
you get a
normal
5-degree cool off like crappie, they move out and you can still catch them. Bass will move out, and I think they move to another lake.
You can go underground.
Yeah,
But at normal pool, you get a good, calm, bright, sunny day, and they will.
right up.
Yeah, because
You never hear of anybody really. The old, Fred and some of those guys used to be, February, March throwing jerk baits here on Truman and
I
catching
love
some fish.
fishing
But no.
You see a lot
year-round bass
of
fishing.
20, 21 pound stringers, but they, most of the time they're jerk baits in April. If the lake wasn't high and in the grass, jerk bait would be an awesome bait to fish this time of year. You'll catch big ones on that thing.
Yeah.
And but with it being up, it just hurts this lake because the fish aren't
Spreads the fish out.
spreads the fish out, and there's not on Lake of the Ozarks. You have docks, and a lot of them.
Yeah.
So you always, it's even in your mind that hey, I'm fishing around something. I'm not just out here throwing around
Structure.
the middle of the lake. But if you don't like fighting cables, don't like fighting big boats and other big boats and other bass fishermen,
Barking dogs.
mad people.
There's always a dog barking on the bank of the lake.
You can come to Truman and it'll be peaceful. You'll be listening to turkeys gobbling.
Yeah, that is the one cool thing about Truman. It's fairly pristine around the whole area. Tons
Beautiful.
of core ground, and
It won't be this weekend.
If the water hits 60, or even gets above that, will there be any kind of early morning topwater bite?
that's a good question.
I don't think so.
Not as
yet.
murky as the water is, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, not yet.
I just like the name Whopper Flopper.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's coming. I mean, that's far away.
I've had a few
Big
buddies.
mistake.
I've had a few buddies now that wasn't on Truman. It was in strip pits around the area that sent me some Snapchats of them hammering bass on a spook in the strip pits. So,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Less volume of water warms up faster.
Yeah.
Warmer and clear.
Yeah.
You couldn't throw a spook right now where the bass are at. I mean, you
Yeah.
couldn't.
Just they're too far up in the.
It's, yeah, that grass and stuff's just everywhere, and it would be.
Yeah.
I mean, spinnerbait's hard enough.
Mm-hmm.
You're constantly feeling the blades stop turning and the vibrating blades stop turning. It's just.
Is there ever? I never hear anyone talking about throwing a frog in Truman. Right now, I mean, yeah, it's cold, but you talk about flooded grass.
If
Could
it
it-
was next month,
Yeah.
the water temperature was 10 to 15 degrees warmer,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, frog work, great.
Yeah.
I thought everybody tried
Frogs, spooks,
One of my favorite
worms.
go-tos in that high water, once we get past
Yeah.
the spawn, is a 12-inch white power one.
Mm.
Weightless, just flip it in there and swim it through.
Mm.
Yeah.
And they're not bashful when they take it.
Hmm. No, I'm sure people fish frogs out here on Truman. I don't hardly ever hear people talking
You can
about
fish.
it.
You can fish. There's a lot of people fish frogs by reeling them. You know,
Mhm.
just their little tails, just
Mhm.
little plastic frogs. But you're probably talking about like they do on grass mats.
I like
Yeah.
freaking working on
And it
it.
works. They fish them in the summer some.
I mean, I've seen people throw them over open water, like you said, and working them.
I mean, I don't. I'm gonna go out and let. Truman is a great lake to fish. It's not a big top water lake.
Mm-hmm.
For some unknown reason, it's not. You catch them a lot on top water, but I haven't seen a lot of tournaments won on top water. Now you go out in the morning, first 2 hours, and just
Mm-hmm.
smack them. Now one of the biggest stringers I've ever caught wasn't during a tournament, and it was up on 13 Highway Bridge on the riprap, and it was on a buzz bait in July.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for the first 2 hours,
Mhm.
you just banged them. But
Yeah.
then it just kind of dies off. But it's a great black buzzbait lake.
Mm.
Early.
Early.
Cloud.
No.
No.
No. Once they get up, late spawn, early post spawn, black buzzbait.
Mm.
I've seen tournaments won on that. But for the most part, you know, this is a cranking, flipping, big worm, big jig
Yeah.
lake.
Yeah. Well, and David Ryan's one of our contributors, and he talks about the big worm and his black market balsa, the square bill in the summertime, and he, like you, is aware that the fish get up a little more shallow than people think in the summertime.
Yep.
And the old square bill can really do some
I
damage.
know everybody thinks they can just go buy a crankbait off the shelf and open a package and go fish it.
KVD 2.5.
Mhm.
And the KVD 2.5, the plastic style crankbaits are good in the spring. They're good now, not right now because they'll get in this grass.
Yeah.
And can't get through it. But when you go buy one of David's black market balsas, now don't tell your wife.
Mhm. Yeah.
$50.
Yeah, they're a little
But-
pricey.
It works.
Mhm.
I bought one when he first started making. I bought 3
Mm-hmm.
when he very first started making them, and I mean, my wife, she would have killed me. She knew I'd spend $150 on 3 crankbaits. I mean, I about died.
Yeah.
But I took it out, and one of the first tournaments I fished, we won $4,000, and it was off that bait.
Yeah.
I mean, it just made a world of difference.
Well, it freaking flutters.
Huh.
It's like a work of art. I mean,
It is. It's
you
a
know,
talent.
you can understand why they're expensive. It's a freaking work of art, and it flutters around like no other freaking bait can.
Yep.
So,
You're looking for that reaction.
yeah, interesting.
I like his jerk baits too.
Yeah.
Baits are good.
Yeah.
Something that don't get talked about is his wiggle warts. They're
Mm.
some of my favorite to throw. You know, the old wiggle warts are hard to find now.
Right.
You know, they're expensive too to buy.
Yeah.
And I've got some of his old wiggle warts and have done really well on them. They're a good bait.
So, 8 something's gonna win it. Could go either way on Truman or Lake of the Ozarks. You think there could be an 8-pounder pulled out of Truman?
I haven't seen one in a long time.
Yeah.
A long time.
Yeah.
I've caught 2. Both of them weighed exactly the same. I caught them a year apart within 25 yards of each other on the same rounded point on jerkbait. and they were both 8.15, and that's been years ago.
Mm.
Here lately, biggest fish I've had last summer, I had one almost 7.
Mm.
And I haven't seen a whole bunch bigger than that
Yeah.
at all.
David McCormick was telling me a story when we were shooting video with him last week about, and I think this was fairly recently in the last year or two, he'll get his wife out occasionally. She doesn't love to go out and go fishing, you know, the way we all are intense and, you know, getting after it. But she went out with him, I swear it was last summer, the summer before, and there was a tournament going on of some kind, but they were just fun fishing. Mm-hmm. And kind of like what you're talking about, like people just casting out, and it always just happens when, you know, the person who never comes, she casts out this spinner bait and wham, right in front of several other boats, and it was a 9+ pound bass on Truman Lake. Yep. And, you know, beginner's luck, I don't know, but it always does. Yep, that's just how it works. So,
you know, Hoagle's Creek's where I've heard of the biggest fish I've heard about on Truman Lake's been caught in Hoagle's Creek. Mm-hmm. That's a great early.
What was that one that was caught out of Bucksaw? So there's 13.9, I think, is the lake record.
Yep.
wow.
That was in a tournament.
13.9.
I mean, there's some big ones here.
Yeah.
I've heard of more than one 10-pounder caught in Hoagle's.
Mm-hmm.
Denny used to tell me, I took Denny's place at Sterritt Creek when he moved there and went full time. And he used to tell me that it was common to catch a 9 or a 10 on a palmy on a jerkbait in late March, early April.
Mm-hmm.
But that's 30 years ago.
Yeah.
I think it's going to take an 8.5 pounder on Lake of the Ozarks on a white wiggle wart. I have no freaking idea.
It might do it, though.
I have no idea.
Well, there's the thing, you know, like you said, there's opportunities to win money other than just weighing the big fish. Big fish wins 100
There's a
grand.
lot of money.
Yeah,
Only one person going to win big fish.
That's
And
right.
I think they're paying 48
48 spots, I believe,
spots.
every 2 hours.
They moved, it used to just be 30.
Yeah.
Now they're paying 48. It's really grown, and they're
Big fish.
every 2 hours.
Big fish for the weekend's 100 grand. I believe second place is 20 or 25 grand. Third place 10 grand. So
Now, how do they do that? Is that on each lake?
I think that's for the whole.
Combined. The
So
lakes are
they're
combined.
Ethernetted where they know what's going on?
They just expanded the water, so
Yeah.
they're getting to have so many people fishing it. They just expanded it.
Yeah.
I guess my protocol would be, if I was fishing it, would be a big bait all day long.
You can go with.
I mean, I'm fishing for one.
You're fishing for one big fish, but just go to your big fish baits. I mean, you know, if you're in the clear water, you can throw a big swim bait. I mean, that swim baits won it.
Mm-hmm.
They won it last year,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it might have won it the year before that too. Jigs, always big fish baits, big jigs. I wouldn't fish finesse or none. I'd throw big jigs. Wiggle warts have won it,
Mm-hmm.
but spinner baits have won it a lot. Spinner baits are, if you're gonna just go fish Truman and you didn't like, flipping bushes can be a booger, and you're gonna lose half the fish that you hook. You know, especially if you don't have the big rod and the big line. And especially if you've got somebody fishing with you, which a lot of people do, like me. I'm going to take out a couple high school kids or a high school kid. I'm taking him, and you know, I don't know how good he is at flipping bushes. It can be a problem because you kind of got to lay the wood to him and turn them around, or you're going to lose them. But he could tie on a spinner bait or a swim bait and just go to work, and I guarantee you're going to run into a decent fish before the day's up.
Make some money.
Well, a lot of good stuff. We're right at about an hour. Before we wrap up, Jeff, I wanted to get a few quick thoughts on the catfish.
Yep. Lake's starting to stabilize compared to what we had, where it was raising 1.5 foot a day or whatever, you know, here a couple weeks ago. But as we start to mellow out, and with them running water and still water coming in, but we're hanging. Still a really, really good bite out there. You can catch them shallow, and I've even been on Lake of the Ozarks catching a bunch of big old catfish down here. But on the Truman side, I'm still catching a lot of fish shallow. Once that water gets up around that 62, 63, I'm more close to 70, but a lot of guys will start dragging baits, you know, when it gets to 63 to 65, start drifting flats and stuff like that. So that'll change here pretty soon. Right now, we're still catching a lot of fish shallow.
Nice. Very good. Well, thanks a bunch, guys, for being here. Thank you guys for watching. All of you guys that are premium or free members, we appreciate it. The support means a ton. It allows us to keep this thing rolling. You know, we launched in August of 2020, and it has just grown tremendously. And it's all because of you guys supporting it. And if there's any topics in the future, any specific questions you have, write them into the website, into the Facebook page, and we'll do our best to get to everyone that we can. And you know, like I said, thank you guys, and please be sure to share with your friends and family that Fish Truman, if they haven't heard about the website, be sure to pass it along to them, and it just helps us keep this thing rolling. So thanks again. On my right here, Steve Blake, one more time, Steve Blake's Guide Service. Steve, how do people get a hold of you to book a trip?
660-525-0692.
And he does crappie, white bass, hybrids, largemouth.
Right now it's largemouth crappie. The white bass hybrids aren't really fired up yet, but it won't be long.
Yeah, yep. So give him a shout. We got Richard Bolin of Richard Bolin's Guide Service. Richard, how do they get a hold of you?
660-351-5361.
All right. And yeah, freaking, you're probably booked up like crazy, I'd imagine. And same for you too, but
Yep, I'll give you my number.
yeah.
You maybe just want to call and talk sometime.
Yeah, that's right.
660-351-5420.
And that's Jeff Falkenberry of Endless Season Guide Service. And Darren, you're not a guide. I don't know that you need to be giving out your phone number, but people can find you on Facebook, and you know, we're super excited to.
In the winner's circle on tournament day.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's nice to be in that circle. We've been fishing them crappie tournaments. They've been eluding us. We're second placers. Second, third, fourth. We can't break that first place.
Hey, finishing in the money, that you can't beat that. So, thank you guys again for watching. Be sure to follow these guys on social media. Thank you one more time to Nini's Italian Steakhouse, to David Townsend of Just Another Crappie Bait Company in Englishport Marine. We will catch you guys on the next one.